Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. This is a Fox News alert. President Trump just walked down the steps of Air Force One, arriving back in the United States after his historic trip in the Middle East. And now we continue our coverage of our top story tonight, the tapes of then President Joe Biden answering questions from Special Counsel Robert Hur about his mishandling of classified information. They were just released, and as expected, they reveal a man who is struggling cognitively. So what does that mean about Joe Biden's health and mental state while he was the most powerful man on the planet? Joining us now is Fox News senior medical analyst, Dr. Mark Siegel. Dr. Siegel, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. Now, we've all, like I said, we've seen less than 13 minutes of 6 hours of tapes, but it's pretty scary. It's even worse than it was what was written down on a piece of paper. When you hear the dramatic pauses, the slurring of the words, forgetfulness about major dates that anybody could come up with. What does that tell you as a doctor?
Well, you know, Jason, I have to point out that we were talking about this on this show almost 5 years ago when he was running for president, and I never considered those gaffes. I mean, I hadn't examined him, but they never seemed like gaffes. They seemed like periods of disorientation, loss of memory. His physician at the time, Kevin O'Connor, was explaining away his gait, and you just saw how well President Trump walks down the stairs of Air Force One. Well, President Biden, not to make a comparison, was stumbling, was halting, and it looked to me like a neurological kind of gait, like something upstairs was wrong. And he has atrial fibrillation, which can cause vascular dementia, and we never saw an MRI. We only saw excuses made, excuses for gaffes. So I'm actually not surprised to see this, but what's really disturbing, of course, is to see in the audio itself that he doesn't remember when his poor son died, that he doesn't remember when he left the office of vice president. He doesn't remember when Donald Trump was elected. And probably worst of all, he was let off the hook on the classified documents because he doesn't remember that they're classified documents. That's not someone fit to be commander-in-chief of the United States.
We're talking with Dr. Siegel here about the Biden tapes being released tonight by Axios, but we're also simultaneously watching President Trump, who's back on the ground. He's now aboard Marine One, back in the United States of America. Marine One's about to roll out and get up in the air there. We're live at Joint Base Andrews. We'll continue to show you the video of what's going on here until it goes out of the camera shot. But Dr. Siegel, let me go back to you here, because that is the concern, the most vigorous job on the face of the planet, where you have to make split-second decisions. Could be as dramatic as nuclear war, but you've got to deal with things that affect people's lives, that are dealing with our military in a split second. Did you hear or see anything that would lead you to believe in those minutes that he was cognitively up to the role and responsibility of being the president?
No, absolutely not. And I actually have to point something else out that our viewers may not know. These things wax and wane. So you might have your good moments. You might even have your good days. And you may be the last to know that what you're suffering from, but everybody else around you know. So that makes this a massive cover-up, which is what we've been suspecting and stating for a long time. A good day or a good soundbite doesn't make you qualified to be president in that moment. And another thing that's come up, and I don't want to speculate, but could he have been given something to make him do better or perform better at a certain moment? We don't know the answer to that either. I think it's time for full disclosure. There's a lot of reasons President Trump won, but probably the main one is that the American public feels that they were lied to and that there was a cover-up here.
How responsible do you think the White House physician, there is always at the president's side, within very short distance, a medical doctor that is there to serve the country, not just the president, but to serve the country, to protect the country from a president who may get hurt, may have an episode, may have a medical situation? How culpable is that person? Is it possible that person could just claim that they were oblivious to it?
No, Jason, I've written a lot of these myself, and not for the White House, of course, but I read the fine print, and I was screaming at the time, where's the MRI scan, and why are you calling this gait problem orthopedic? And by the way, why are you saying the neurological exam was normal? and the neurological evaluation was normal, when in retrospect, it hardly looks like that. He's got a lot to answer to right now. I take those documents very seriously, and any physician should. They shouldn't obfuscate, they shouldn't mislead, and especially not the American public regarding the highest office of the land.
Dr. Siegel, thank you so much for joining us tonight as we watch this video, Marine One.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.